Good afternoon, and welcome to today's program and webinar, part of the highly acclaimed series of webinars that ACP, the Association of Continuity Professionals, presents for its members. For more information about ACP, visit www.acp-international.com. My name is Ed Goldberg, and it's my honor to host today's webinar. My thanks to ACP's headquarters staff at ADG in Albany and our good friends at Continuity Housing for their roles as webinar experts who work behind the scenes to ensure that these webinars happen flawlessly. And a big thanks to our webinar series sponsor, Continuity Housing. Continuity Housing guarantees pre-negotiated hotel rooms at substantial savings for the critical employees of larger and mid-sized companies in order to help prevent a business disruption in the event of a crisis. They've created a patent-pending guaranteed employee housing program which secures and protects hotel rooms for critical personnel and their families if needed, while saving companies significant expense. Continuity Housing has a 100% success record with their deployments, and each member of their team has at least 10 years of experience in the hotel industry. For information on receiving a free 30-minute consultation about your deployment housing needs, visit continuityhousing.com or leave a comment in the survey that will pop up at the end of the webinar. This and previous webinars are recorded, and they're made available to ACP members on the ACP website. Help us out if you would, please. If you have an idea for a webinar topic, please send it to staff@acp-international.com. Our guest speaker will be taking questions at the end, so please post them during the webinar in the question box in your control panel anytime during the presentation. We'll get you a response to any questions that we're not able to answer now. Our topic today is basically that we all know hiring the right people for the right job is critical to the success of an organization. Many applicants who are technically qualified for the job sometimes just don't work out, and we always ask why. This webinar explores the 4 C's of a Diamond Employee Model, a tool used by managers or anyone to broaden the focus on all the critical aspects of the position and not strictly the person's technical skill set. We're thrilled to have with us today Colleen Dutton, Associate Vice President for Human Resources at the University of Texas in Dallas. She's the creator of the 4 C's of a Diamond Employee Model and the PIE, Plan, Identify, and Evaluate chart, tools that have been successfully incorporated into hiring and employee relations practices at UTD, University of Texas, Dallas. Also, it's been used at Rice University, and other employees have used it as well. She's also created, designed, developed, and managed the TEAMS program at Rice University, a year-long leadership development program for first-line supervisors and mid-level managers. And she created the talent management tree, the tree model, to lead efforts in succession planning. Please join me in welcoming Colleen Dutton. Good afternoon, Colleen.
Good afternoon, and thank you, everyone. It's an honor for me to be here today. I really look forward to walking through this model with you, and hopefully you'll be able to take it and find ways to make better hires at your organization, as well as deal with some of those tricky employee relations problems that we all face. So let's get started. So first of all, how can the 4 C's help you? Well, we're going to walk through 3 different components today. The 4 C's of a Diamond Employee. It's really going to get you to think about what attributes does the employee really need to be successful in the job, or maybe why isn't this employee meeting the expectations of the job. The 4 C's of a Diamond Supervisor, and you'll see a lot of similarities with these compared to the Diamond Employee Model, but you're going to look at them through a different lens. And this is the part of the presentation when I do it live and in front of an audience. I usually get a hush that falls over the crowd, because this is really a time of self-reflection for those of you who are supervisors or maybe desire to be a supervisor one day. And then the 4 C's of a Diamond Employer. We all know that finding the right talent for our organizations is critical to our success. So not only do we want to hire in great people, but we also want to make sure that we're an employer of choice. So how do we become that Diamond Employer and really recruit the people that we want to come and stay? So first of all, let's start with some basics. What are the 4 C's of a diamond? A diamond that women wear when they get married or get proposed to. So what are the 4 C's of a diamond? Some of you may know this already, but for those of you who don't, it's cut, color, clarity, and carat. And what does that tell you? Well, that basically tells you about the value of the diamond, what you're getting, some varying different cuts, everything from princess cut to marquise to pear to emerald cut, varying degrees of color, everything from pink to white, different clarities, different occlusions in different diamonds, and then carat. You know, what's the size of the diamond that you're getting? And so really, when you go to find a diamond for that special someone in your life, then what's important to them is really what you should be focusing on. So what is important for that individual? How big of a diamond does this person want? You know, the cut and color, clarity. So a lot of that applies to the recruitment and employee relations process. So that kind of led to the 4 C's of a diamond employee. And this model was created actually one day I was thinking, how come all these issues seem to be focused around similar things? And before, I've been doing HR now for over 20 years, and before I got into higher ed, I did healthcare, public and private healthcare. And to me, the 4 C's of a diamond employee model really applies no matter what the industry is, because every industry is going to be looking for what makes them successful. And so the 4 C's of a diamond employee, you have character, culture, commitment, and capability. And where most employers struggle when they make bad hires is that they focus so much on the capability that they overlook the importance of people being able to get along in the workplace and be a positive influence in the workplace culture. So what I'm going to do is take you through these 4 different aspects of the diamond employee and kind of talk about those. And as we go through this, think about how does this apply in my workplace? How does this apply to me as a supervisor? How does this apply to me as an employee? Think about your next hire when you go through that. I'll be the first to tell you this model is not foolproof by any means. What it's designed to do, though, is before you hire somebody is to really stop and think, what do you really need in this position? You can go out and hire the same old people that you've been hiring, but if that's not working for you, why would you continue to do that? So sometimes as managers, you have to sit back and say, okay, something's not working well here in this process and in the people that I'm hiring. So let me take a step back and see, what do I really need in this position? So as you go through this, you're going to see a lot of questions. There's not a whole lot of answers in here. What it is things that you need to think about so you can come up with your own answers. It's a process to help you think through what do you really need in order to get that diamond employee. So let's start with character. What are the necessary characteristics to be successful in this particular position, whatever position you might be hiring for? What characteristics would impede someone's success? As you all know, there's different characteristics that draw us to the line of work that we do. And you may have someone who's really great maybe at the front desk, but if you were to switch that person and put them in a different type position, they might not be as successful. Why is that? Well, probably because the characteristics that they bring with them makes them well suited for that type of position. Maybe they're well suited to be someone who's out front in greeting people and someone who can really handle a crowd when they come in to the front desk or something. But then again, you may have another great employee who really doesn't like to talk to people. They want to be in the back room. They don't want to have to really deal with a whole lot of people. And both of these individuals may be diamonds to you because in those individual positions, they really excel because it really plays to what their characteristics are and what their strengths are. Now, what would happen if you took both of those employees that you know are really strong and top-notch performers in those positions and switched them? How successful do you think that would be? Maybe they technically can do the job, but the characteristics that they bring with them, they're either not going to do it well or they're going to be miserable doing it. So a lot of times people think, well, I'll just hire in top talent and I can stick them in anywhere. Yeah, that may be true from a technical standpoint, but you also have to look at, is that person going to be successful in that position based on, you know, what's their personality, what's their characteristics, what do we really need in that position? If you have a position that you really need someone to be outgoing and, you know, friendly and really getting out there, and talking with people, then hiring someone who doesn't want to talk to anybody really isn't going to work out. Same as if you need someone who's really detail oriented and you hire somebody who doesn't appear they can, you know, put ABC together sometimes, then that's probably not going to be the best position for that person either. So again, as you go through the hiring process, think about what's important for that particular position. There's some uniform ones here: honesty, integrity. Are they trustworthy and respectful of others? Do they take responsibility for their actions and learn from the different mistakes that they may make? Because everybody does. Are they dependable, reliable, and are they resourceful? Can they be discreet when needed, or are they the office gossip? So as we all know, that can create problems in and of itself. So I think we all want to work with individuals who show appropriate compassion and empathy to our fellow humans, and do they know how to display good judgment? And have you defined what good judgment is for your organization or for your division or department? So what you really want to focus on is what traits are truly important to your organization. What makes your organization different? And how do you look for those traits? How do you look for those characteristics? How do you find those during the interview process? So we're going to come back to that here in just a few minutes. But these are all things that you might be trying to fill 5 different positions, but my guess is all 5 of those positions have different demands on those characteristics that you need to be successful in the job. The next aspect of the 4 C's is culture. And when I talk about culture, I'm not talking about age, race, ethnicity, any of those items. I'm really talking about the personality of the department, of the school, of the organization. How do you define culture in your office? How do you define it for your department, for your organization? Because you can have a global culture, but then you also have subcultures depending on the size of your organization. And we've all probably worked with individuals. If you're a big enough organization, you know that in one department this person can probably do really, really well, but in another department in a very similar position, they probably would not be very successful. Well, why is that? Part of it's because it's a different culture in that department, different expectations, different way of kind of getting things done. Even though the position may be very similar, you're in a different type environment. You're in a sub-environment that has a different way of maybe doing things or a different way of interacting. So one thing to keep in mind is, you know, is this person going to interact well with others? Are they cordial and professional? Will they have a positive influence on the workplace culture? We've all worked with those people who are the quote bad apples, and so you know if you hire in somebody who's a bad apple, what are your chances of changing them? Probably not a whole lot. So you have to make sure that how am I going about the hiring process so that I can hire in people who will be the best positive influence on our workplace culture. What within your culture needs to change, and how should you implement that change? It's very important because a lot of times hiring managers, senior leadership will say, we need to bring somebody in to help us change this culture. Well, there's a lot of ways you can do that. I use the analogy of, do you want the change to happen like a hurricane, or do you want the change to happen like a tornado? Maybe it's just because I grew up in Texas, I can relate to both of those. But a hurricane, you know, is coming. It may be significant change, significant damage, as some employees may report, but you know it's coming, and there's advance notice in most cases. With tornadoes, it doesn't quite happen that way. You may have limited notice, and even though the damage might not be as bad or the impact may not be as significant, the fact that people didn't know it was coming, that can be worse. That can be more damaging than the actual storm itself. So think about how you implement some of these changes within your culture. What is your culture like? How receptive to change are the individuals for that culture? How receptive are they to any of those? What's important to maintain? Because we can all look in our current workplaces and realize, man, this is one thing I really like about my workplace. That's important to know, because you want to make sure that you don't take that away and that you don't change that to a point where employees feel that it's no longer of value to them. Are you promoting positive work environment through your words and your actions? If you've ever received an insincere thank you or someone who just said thank you just going through the motions, you recognize it. Same as people recognize an insincere apology as well. So make sure that what you are doing, that your actions back up your words and that you're reinforcing a positive workplace culture. So, and also it's important to find out what aspect of the culture is truly valued by your employees. And this goes beyond workplace pay and benefits, but what is it about the workplace culture? I know when I joined UT Dallas about 4 years ago, one thing that I realized is something called a First Friday breakfast that they do. It's really important to the team to get together first Friday of every month, and people bring kind of a potluck thing. It was part of the culture, and it was a significant part that people really did not want to go away. I actually had people lobby for it to continue, and I had no idea it even existed my first month here, so by all means we continued that, and it continues to this day, and people really seem to enjoy it. So there's a lot of things that, again, have nothing to do with pay or benefits and value that impact your culture. So you have to find out what those are. Moving on to commitment. This is one that gets interesting because what demonstrates or defines commitment to the job? Well, it's kind of like beauty. It's often in the eye of the beholder, because what I may think defines commitment to the job, you may not think that. So it just depends on what is necessary for the position. It goes back to the culture of your organization. It goes back to the characteristics of the individual that you're hiring. What do they see as commitment to the position? And again, it's not just the number of hours that are worked, but how do they spend their time? You can have people who come in and work 10, 12 hours a day and not get a whole lot done. But your diamonds can come in and work 8 hours a day, maybe less, and work circles around some of the other individuals. So again, it's not just the hours they work, but how are they spending their time? Are they engaged? Are they effective and efficient in their work? Do they really take on a team player approach to where they not only want to help themselves succeed, but help others? Are they demonstrating the ownership and responsibility and accountability that's necessary, or are they quick to blame somebody else when it doesn't work out very well? Does this individual manage up, keep others informed? Are they really striving for personal and professional growth? And how does commitment to the job vary based on personality traits or cultural differences? You may have seen some of this in the workplace with all the different generations that we have in the workplace now. How does, say, a millennial define commitment to the job versus a baby boomer? I think you'll find some differences there. There's a lot of employers who struggle with the work from home concept. Not only is it appropriate for the position, but if it is, should it even be done? Because there's still a lot of people who think, well, you're working from home, you're not really committed to the job. Where others say, you're working from home, you're going to get twice as much done. Of course they're committed to the job. Who's right, who's wrong on that really depends on the company culture and what they're willing to accept. These are all factors you have to consider when you're looking at what's the level of commitment that I'm looking for someone in this position. And these are always great questions to ask during the interview process too, is how does that individual define being committed to the job? You know, are they engaged? Are they proactive? These are all great things for them to say. But another way to ask that is, how do you determine when someone is not committed to the job? Typically in a presentation setting, I'll ask, how do you define commitment to the job? And I typically don't get a whole lot of responses. But when I ask, how do you know when someone's not committed to the job? Well, there's a lot of things that come flying out of the audience, which is great. So I ask you to kind of reverse that and think about, what are you really looking for in someone who's committed to the job, and how do you define that? Because you want to make sure that your commitment level, or the commitment level that your organization expects, that your hiring person, your candidate, has that same level of understanding. So the fourth C is capability, and this is the one that really seems like it's the easiest one, and in a lot of ways it is. A lot of things you can tell from the resume or the application. or through just a conversation with a candidate about their technical skills. What have they done? What has been their experience? But what it doesn't always tell you is the other 3 C's, the character, culture, and commitment level. So capability, do they have the knowledge, skills, and abilities to meet the performance expectations of the position? You know, how do you go about finding that out? And I'm just guessing that most of you approach your hiring practices strictly focusing on the technical components. And that's common, and it's very common. When I worked in healthcare, I had a lab director who went through 3 different lab techs within probably about 14, 16 months. And she asked me one time, she said, I can't believe I can't seem to keep this position filled because I'm hiring in people who are really technically competent. Well, we talked about why, and she was actually hiring in a lab tech for second shift. Well, based on how the hospital ran, second shift lab techs actually had to go out and talk to doctors and nurses and discuss some of the lab results. She was hiring in people who were great under the microscope, or actually behind the microscope, but these people really didn't have very many social skills and really did not want to go out and face the nurses and doctors and all have those conversations. So once we kind of redefined how she went about her recruitment process, she was actually able to find some people that were a better fit for that position based on what was needed. And again, they were all technically strong, but some of them just didn't have the the characteristics that fit in with the expectations and the culture of that hospital. So if you have someone who's a really great individual and you think they've got the first 3 C's, can they be trained in the KSAs that are necessary to be successful? Sometimes your best candidate is not the one who has the most experience. Sometimes your best candidate is the one who has experience, aptitude, and desire to continue to learn and develop, and also has the character, culture, and commitment that you're looking for. Capability is really the only C that training may help you improve. If the other C's are not there, you can certainly set the expectation, you can influence, guide, coach, mentor, and certainly lead by example. But at the end of the day, you kind of hope for the best and hold them accountable. I wish there was a class that I could send people to that would help improve their personalities. If I could make you a nicer person to deal with, then by all means, I think I could get that class filled probably, every day of the year. And I wish I would have invented it. So, but there is not one. So that's where it goes back to the characteristics. If you have someone who is, again, technically strong, but they really don't like to talk with people, and they really don't care if they get along with others or not, how difficult is that person going to be in the workplace? So finding your C's, finding the first 3 C's, that to me is actually the most challenging part of the whole interview process. So again, someone who's technically capable will eventually become of less value overall to the organization. Now, why is that? Well, typically that happens because there's something called a high maintenance factor. So when you have someone who's truly technically sound, but they're creating all sorts of other problems for you in the workplace, eventually the scales tip to where the technical value that they bring does not outweigh the problems that they're creating. So I say beware the cubic zirconia. So CZs out there, and we've all probably had them. So you work with somebody who maybe they're a colleague of yours, and in front of the boss, they're great, they're nice, they're cordial, they always seem to have the right answers, they always seem to be the team player, and the boss thinks they're just wonderful. But behind the scenes, when the boss is not around, all the colleagues know this person cannot be depended upon, they don't know what they're doing, they're difficult to get along with. Well, I call those the CZs because they're all sparkle and shine, but there's no substance there. There's no real substance. And so when you hire in a CZ, you've basically hired in the bad apple, and you've created a really difficult work environment for everybody else who's left there. So ask your team, who are the diamond employees? Because they'll tell you. Because often the boss is the last person to know, unfortunately, but that's often the case, that the CZs show up in the most opportune times, but then when times get tough, where are those CZs? Well, typically they're not anywhere because they don't have the substance to back it up. So again, be aware of those, and we've all probably hired a CZ at some point in our life. I know I have. I'm not immune to that. But you want to be careful. Typically the CZs, there are red flags during the hiring process. And if you think back about some bad hires that you've made over the years, there's almost always a red flag, and your gut reaction was, that's a little bit of concern to me. But maybe you were so excited to either finally fill the position or just try to downplay it more. And so you decided to go ahead and move forward with the hire anyway. And they turned out to be a CZ. So there is actually a fifth C. And as my husband says, it's cost, and I tell him, no, it's absolutely not. So cost doesn't factor in when it comes to this. But you factor in character, culture, commitment, and capability. So what is that fifth C? Well, that fifth C is choice. Choice, everybody has a choice on how they're going to respond, how they're going to react, how they're going to approach a situation. So you may have some individuals who say, well, I'm difficult, I'm too direct, you're just going to have to get over that, that's just who I am. Well, I don't buy that, because you can't tell me that person acts like that with every single person throughout their entire life. People typically know how to temper their behavior, how to temper their moods, and they have a choice on how they're going to respond or react. Now, everybody gets a bad day at the office. Granted, we all have them. But that is something that would be typically more out of character or out of the norm. But every day we have a choice on how we're going to respond or react. Same as employees have a choice on whether they want to be a positive influence on the workplace culture, whether they want to give the commitment level expected, whether they want to make the most out of the characteristics that they bring to the table, and how much of their capability do they want to put forth. So that's kind of the foundation of the 4 C's of a diamond employee. It's character, culture, commitment, capability, and then the bonus C, which is choice. Whoops. So I'm going to move on to the 4 C's of a diamond supervisor. And as you'll see, 3 of them are exactly the same: character, culture, commitment. But you're going to look at those through a different lens. And communication is the 4th one for a supervisor. So I always ask people to look in the mirror, and what do you see back in the mirror? I would say that a mirror is really the best employee relations and best leadership tool you can ever have, because a lot of times it's just a matter of self-reflection. What am I doing to impact this situation for the good or not so good? So for the 4 C's of a diamond supervisor, again, you start with character. What are the characteristics that are necessary to be successful? And the characteristics I'm talking about are not anything that makes you, quote, a bad person or a good person, because we all have strengths. We all have things that play to our strength in the workplace, maybe at home, difficult situations. Some people can handle crisis a lot better than other people. Why? Well, that's part of the characteristics that they bring. So you have to think about, especially if you're looking either moving into a leadership position, or if you're looking to hire someone into a leadership position. Typically, what do a lot of employers do? You hire in the best person who has the strongest technical skills, or you pull someone and you promote from within. Well, why? Because they're great at what they do. That's wonderful. But that doesn't mean they're going to be the best manager or leader that you need based on their own characteristics. So what would impede someone's success? Some general ones that I think we would all pretty much agree on. Are you honest? Do you show integrity? Are you respectful of others? Do you take responsibility for your own actions, or do you blame others when things go wrong? Which typically, I've been doing HR for a long time, and that's still one of the #1 complaints that you hear. And I hear this from any industry, is that employees get frustrated because the boss will blame them when something goes wrong. So, one characteristic you might want to look for is, can this person admit to mistakes and learn from them? And then ask yourself, if you're in a leadership position, How does your behavior influence your team? Influence them for the good or not so good? If you're seeing behaviors in your team that you really don't care for and you're thinking, wow, where did that come from? Stop and look in the mirror, self-reflect and say, am I doing that? And do they think it's okay because I'm doing that? So other characteristics, being dependable and reliable, being discreet when needed, because, if an employee comes to you with concerns they want to express, they may want to come to you in confidence, can you be trusted that you're going to keep that between the two of you and show the appropriate compassion and empathy? How would your direct reports describe you? And how would your peers and supervisor describe you? There's some differences, but the fundamental issue should still be the same. So if you're a completely different person when you're in front of your peers or your supervisor, ask yourself why. What are you doing differently with them that you're not expressing with the direct reports? So if the direct reports are saying this person is very difficult to get along with and they're never responsive and you can't get anything from them, but your peers and supervisors say, oh, they're great, be a wonderful person, what's the disconnect there? Because there should be more continuity. Otherwise, you're really shortchanging one of the groups here. Ask yourself, and this is always a tricky one, what are the characteristics that work for me in a leadership position, and what are the ones that work against me? What do I have to mitigate so that I don't make matters worse, or so that I can be a successful leader? I typically hear I have to make sure I'm patient enough. I hear that one quite a bit. Make sure that I'm not too direct. Because people, their own characteristics, maybe they're impatient, they're overly direct, and sometimes I hear I have to make sure I speak up enough, because maybe someone's characteristics and their personality is that they don't want to have to deal with confrontation, they don't want to have to raise issues, they just rather kind of leave it alone, and that's fine, but is that what's really successful for the position that they're in? So culture. So you have a huge responsibility to place culture if you're a manager or a leader, but so do all the employees that you hire in as well. So, but the culture, if you're a leader or manager, how do you define the culture of your department and organization, and do you enhance and influence that in a positive manner? Again, what's important to maintain, and if you do have to change the culture, how should that be changed? Again, it's not always what you do, but how you do it that makes the difference. So do you interact well with others, and are you cordial, professional? Do you understand and accept the mission and mission and vision of your department, school, organization? Do you promote a positive work environment through words and actions? And another biggie that we often hear is, do you take action to correct problems? Because often managers are creating a culture by default because they won't take the steps necessary to improve the workplace culture, which sometimes means, changing protocols and processes, and sometimes that means changing out individuals who are such a negative influence in the workplace culture. So ask yourself, are you creating a culture by design or by default? Commitment. What actions demonstrate your commitment to the job? And again, it's not just the number of hours that you work, but how do you spend your time? And are you a team player? Are you setting up, promoting goals for the whole team or just for yourself? So are you willing to take a step back and say, this is what's best for the team, even though it might not help me as well? People notice those things. They notice when the leader or the manager says, okay, we're looking at the greater good here. Let me help promote that. So people understand and expect you to be a role model with your behaviors. So again, do you demonstrate ownership and accountability in your work? Are you promoting the success of your team to upper management, or are you taking all the credit for it? Do you support professional and personal growth, not only for yourself but for your staff as well? So these are all things to think about. How are you creating that work environment? Again, by default or by design. So I think this is probably the most important slide of the whole presentation because communication. It's not what you say, but how you say it. And it's not what you do, but how you do it. Those things can make or break a work environment. A lot of times, a lot of great work can be completely wiped out by one really bad conversation that went terribly wrong. So you have to think about, how am I going to relay this message? People understand that if you have to give them bad news, if you have to do a disciplinary action, or someone's position is getting eliminated, people understand you have to have those conversations. But what people don't understand, and what they shouldn't accept, is being mistreated in that process. So again, it's not what you say, but how you say it. And it's not what you do, but how you do it. Because you can give bad news and you can give corrective actions, yet still in a positive way, where the person's dignity and respect is still intact. So think about, when you're in your communications, do you coach or criticize? Do your employees think that you communicate in an effective manner? You may think you are, but is that how it's really coming across? Do you really have an open door policy? And that doesn't mean just that the door is physically open, but have you really created an environment where people are comfortable coming in and talking to you about the good and the bad and the ugly? And how do you communicate under stress? And if you don't know, go home and ask your loved one, husband, wife, kids, good friend, how do you communicate under stress? Because typically how we communicate under stress in our personal lives is much like how we do it in the workplace. We all think that, oh no, we'll do it quite differently, but under a truly stressful situation or an accumulation of stress, we all kind of resort back to what our innate characteristics are, meaning some people withdraw and they don't talk as much, some people lash out, and some people get really indecisive. Some people get very talkative. It just depends on how you react under stress. So if you don't know, go home and ask somebody. And trust me, no one's ever come back and said no one wanted to tell me how I reacted under stress. Most people get the honest feedback. Let's start with a family member first. So instead of just asking one of your direct reports or one of your colleagues. So on communications, this is just an example of how it really doesn't matter how long you've worked with somebody. You think, oh, we've worked together for many, many years. They know what I mean. And not necessarily the case. So the question here, this is a personal example. The picture you see in the corner is my little dog Macy, and yes, that's a little crown and sunglasses. And you'll understand why I'm asking this question here in a minute. So the picture you see here, pardon the dirty laundry room, but she hopped up in this laundry basket. Now this basket is probably about 2.5 feet up off the floor, and she's a little 8-pound Chihuahua Terrier mix. So my husband sends me this picture in the text, and he just says subject is Macy. So I respond and say, what is she doing in there? And his response was, sleeping. Well, I knew she was sleeping. Is that really the question that I had? No, what I really should have asked him was, why is she in the laundry basket? Or how'd she get up there? But that's not what I asked. So he answered the question that I asked. Now, I've been married 27 years. You would think he would know what question I was really asking, but apparently not. So keep in mind that even though you work with people, maybe they're direct reports or supervisor or peers, you've worked with them for a long time, how you communicate is not always a given, that they're going to understand what you're asking. So make sure that you communicate in a way that both of you understand what the situation is. So ask yourself, are you a diamond in the eyes of your employees, or are you a CZ? What kind of manager, leader, supervisor are you really? And what are you doing to make sure that it's a positive work environment for everybody? And you can probably name the fifth C, because guess what? It's the same. We all have a choice on how we act and how we behave and how we address these situations. So when you look in the mirror, would you want to work for you? I mean, you know your strengths, you know your weaknesses, you know what you're good at. Would you want to come and work for you? So something to ask yourself. Again, this is the moment of self-reflection for the supervisors. So the last one I have is really probably the shortest one of all. It's the 4 C's of a diamond employer. And again, 3 of them are exactly the same: character, culture, commitment, again through a different lens. And then the 4th one is compensation. So character. Think about what's the internal and external reputation of your organization. Why do people want to work there? What is it, what is it that attracts you to that organization? What is it that attracts applicants there? Chances are it's something to do with the external reputation or external character. Maybe you have applicants who see that your organization does a lot of, social responsibility, maybe it's sustainability and recycling, maybe it's something along those lines. They think, oh, that's a great place to work because look what they do for the community. That's all part of the character of the institution. So that may attract some people, but keep in mind a bad reputation as an employer also impacts you in a negative way. So again, the character of the institution, or your employer, the internal and external reputation is key to not only attracting and recruiting top talent, but also retaining them. So all that plays into the workplace culture. Why do people stay? Why do they leave? And really, what defines the work experience at your organization? You may find people who say, oh, I'm leaving for more money, but yes, they're going to be working, 60, 70 hours a week. Well, more money, but you're still working more often, maybe that's not the right culture for them to be in. So that's a decision they have to make. But they have to understand the type of culture that they're going into, which is also important when you're hiring in individuals as well. So commitment. What is is your organization committed to the employees through words and actions? Are you an employer that says, yes, you get 6 weeks of vacation time off every year, but when it really comes down to it, no one gets to take the time? So what is the commitment back? Are you allowing, opportunities? Are you allowing professional growth and development opportunities for your individuals, for your employees? And then compensation. Now, none of us work for potato chips, so you want to make sure that your competitive pay is there and that you really are recognizing and rewarding your top talent. But really, the pay is just the start. What do employees really value about your organization? Sometimes that's a more flexible schedule. Sometimes people are saying, look, I know I don't get paid top dollar, but I really appreciate that in the summer I can take off every Friday afternoon and go coach my son's, Little League team. That's of value to people. And having a lot of input maybe into the workplace is of value to individuals. Being able to go on different work-related trips or taking other professional development programs that the company pays for, those are things that are a lot of value to individuals that you can't always put an exact price tag on and that don't show up in the paycheck, but they are very important. So you have to find out what is of value to the employees in your organization. And then what is your role in making your organization a diamond employer? I'm sure you've heard the saying that employees don't leave companies, they leave bad supervisors. And that's true, because there's a lot of times employees who are just so miserable with their supervisor will leave an organization. And how long does it take for you to get that position filled? And how long does it take for you to replace that institutional knowledge? So sometimes you have to look at, okay, why are we having so much turnover here? How come we can't keep people? What's happening with the leadership? Maybe we need to take a second look at that and say, do we really have the right leaders here? Do we have our diamond supervisors to help us be a diamond employer? So. And again, the fifth C, every organization has a choice on how they wish to handle things, how they wish to respond, and how they wish to react or be proactive to address some issues to make sure that they do have a positive workplace environment. I know I'm trying to wrap up here, so any questions about the 4Cs model? I'm more than happy to entertain them. What I'd like to stress is that we talked a lot about the recruitment and application, recruitment process for the 4Cs model, but you can also use this during the in handling employee relations matters, maybe performance management concerns. I can't tell you how many times in my career I've had a manager come in and say, this person just isn't working out, I need to let them go. All right, well, let's talk about what's not working. So we talk about the job description and, okay, what's kind of a day in life in the position, and we go through it, and I'll ask them certain questions, and, well, yes, they can perform that part, and yes, they can do that. So we get through the whole list, and I'm like, well, you just told me they could do everything. Well, yeah, they can, but they're not. or it's how they do it. So someone being technically capable and able to do the job versus I'm choosing not to, that's when it comes down to the character, culture, and commitment. So sending someone to a training class or sending someone to some other outside entity or other structured program, when it really boils down to they don't have the will to do it, they don't have the desire to do it, they're choosing not to do it, you're throwing good training dollars at a bad situation. So if it is an aptitude issue or if it's a technical skill issue that you believe truly getting this person some training and some development will work, then by all means I would do that. But someone who's just choosing not to comply or not to do the job the way it needs to be done, there's not a training class out there that's going to change that. Again, you have to present the expectations to them, and then they're going to have to choose to do it. So that's the presentation.
And we do have a few questions. And
Okay.
actually, you might have started to address the first one already. You talked a lot about how to apply the 4Cs model to the hiring process, but how does it apply when dealing with performance issues with a current employee?
Right. Well, again, what I always ask managers to do is sit down and after we've talked about, okay, what are some of the performance issues? A lot of times it's not truly a performance issue, but it is a behavior issue, which is, you know, just as difficult, if not more difficult, to deal with at times, because a lot of times people don't make the connection that behavior is performance in the workplace. So using the 4Cs model, I would sit down and say, okay, let's talk about this individual. What are the characteristics that they have? What's working against them? What's working for them in this position? I would talk about what's their influence in the workplace culture. Are they a positive influence, or is it someone who they think can help them get to where they want to be eventually, move the department forward? And then what's their commitment level? And then often as you go through and you talk about these different things, managers start to realize that this is not anything to do with the person's technical skill set, but how am I going to address their negativity in the workplace? How am I going to address that they don't want to show up on time every day? How am I going to address that they'll do it, but they'll only do it under certain parameters? Well, someone saying, okay, yes, I'm committed to the job, but I'm committed only, you know, with these restrictions, that's not real commitment. So just you have to walk people through it and get people to understand that, again, sometimes the training isn't always the best option. Sometimes what really needs to happen is a very frank and direct conversation about their behavior in the workplace and how it's become a negative issue and how it's not helping the organization move forward.
Sounds good. Next question we have, what is the best way to make the 4Cs model part of the hiring process and part of the culture?
Okay. What I'd recommend is start talking about it in your workplace. Start talking about what really is our culture here. What really are the characteristics that we need in this position that we're hiring for to be successful. You start having those conversations before you start the hiring process. So as you're drafting up your job description, as you are, you know, starting the interview process and coming up with your questions, ask yourself, don't only focus just on the technical side, but ask yourself, what does it really take for someone to be successful in this position? Again, these are things, this model is designed to make you stop and think and ask questions so you'll be better prepared to find the right person or do everything you can to hopefully find that diamond employee. It's not an after-the-fact issue. So again, work it in as part of your hiring process, as part of your protocols. You're developing your questions and developing your job description. And then for managers, make sure managers understand what are the 4Cs. You know, how do I use this to help develop my team, to help develop myself, to have a better work environment. And I've had other departments use this to really, where they kind of drilled down and said, okay, what are some of the key characteristics of individuals that we want to hire within our department? What are some universal ones? And what is the culture that we want to create here? And what is the culture we want to maintain? And they've really spent some time working on that. And so they have that when they're going out and searching for new employees. They have that when they're going out and looking for new hires, so that they can say, look, the culture we said we wanted to create and develop and really nurture is this. How is this person going to fit into that? So again, it's a lot of things ahead of time that you need to start thinking about, and then it's just a daily practice of it. What's the issue? Not automatically assuming that the person can't do the job. Maybe they don't want to do the job. Sometimes people want to do the job, but they just can't, and so that's difficult too. So it's rare that you find somebody who's really great to get along with, but's not technically competent. So in my line of work, it's typically the opposite. They're technically well-skilled, but no one can get along with them. No one wants to work with them, and those are the really difficult ones too, because you understand as an institution or as an employer that they have a great technical skill set, but how am I going to deal with that?
Great. And we have one more question, and then we are running long on time a little bit. We'll be okay. We're inside an hour. Are you saying that I need to dismiss a high performer or a uniquely skilled individual just because they do not get along well with others?
No, I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, as an employer, you have to make a choice. Are you going to allow someone who may be very technically sound and very technically competent, but very difficult to work with, someone who's not well thought of by employees and who's creating a negative work environment? How much of that are you willing to accept? Because the longer you accept it, the more you encourage it and tolerate it, then you condone it. So you need to make sure that the work environment you're creating is truly by design. So if you're a company that says, I don't care how people are treated, that as long as they perform, well, that's going to be your workplace culture. If you're a company that says, I want people who are very technically sound, and I want people who are respectful of others and that are positive people to work with in the workplace, then that's the culture you're going to create there. So it really depends on what the level, what the employer, what they're willing to accept. And employees have a choice as well, whether or not they want to work in that type of environment.
Well, that's a great point. I've worked at places, you know, I'm old, and I've been working a long time, and we run into cases like that. I've been in IT for many years, and we as a group aren't known for social skills, and we just, a lot of people like working on a computer because they don't have to interact with people, and there's a whole gamut of different issues there, and this really addressed all of them. It's great.
Right, and you know, if that's, you know, again, you brought up a great example. The people who just want to work on the computer and not really have to interact, there are jobs for them out there, and that's fine. It takes all of us to make this world turn. So there are jobs out there for those individuals. What I'm saying is, just don't take someone who may be technically very sound and put them in a position that they don't have the characteristics to really be successful in.
Yeah, great point. Well, for everybody out there, thank you for attending the program. Stick on the line for about 30 seconds, and we have a little bit of information that I think you'll find valuable. But before that, I really want to thank you, Colleen, for a great presentation. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
And I also like to thank again ADG and their webinar experts for their support of our series. And thanks once again to Continuity Housing for their sponsoring the ACP webinar series. And remember to visit continuityhousing.com or leave a comment in the survey if you're interested in how they can provide your critical employees guaranteed housing when they need it most. Be sure to watch the ACP website and email from ACP with future webinar information. And once again, these webinars are recorded. They're made available on the ACP website. When you close your browser, you're going to get a pop-up survey, a very, very brief survey. We really use the information in that to fashion the future topics and content of these webinars. Please take half a minute, that's all it takes, to answer the questions. It helps us refine these productions. And that's it for today. Have a great day. Thank you.